emphasize, it is, in my view, if the young people, now are together, and if, they say anybody who wants any position, sisi develop a criteria ya what leadership is. Na kila mtu sisi akitaka support yetu, sisi kwanza tutamwangalia, tukiona anafaa ametosha boga, tutasema ndio, wewe tutakusupport. It is like that rigorous, movement. Kusema kwamba now, and we are going to be in these positions, so that we say, huyu Gen Z anatosha, akina Tomboya walikuwa, in serikali, wakiwa under, I think 30 or just about 30. Akina, a lot of people, even abroad, mtu anakuwa prime minister akiwa under 35. So nasema hii jambo ya ODS debt, Omtata ameizungumzia sana, Jimmy Wanjigi, Kigame, nafikiri Boniface Mwangi, na kisheria, hata Mozambique ilienda, kotini, mpaka debts zingine zikawa kwamba hawezi kulipa. Kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu hata ukipeana debt, let us say watu wa nje, unajua sheria ya nchi. For example, if you give any debts to Kenya, approval by parliament, then there's also to be, it must be for development, not for recurrent expenditure. Alafu wewe katika yale makaratasi mnaandikana na serikali ya Kenya, unapeana loan ya recurrent. Kwa hivyo unapeana loan kukeuka sheria ya Kenya, and your lawyers, because they are sharp lawyers for those organizations, should be able to tell you that that is a loan against the laws of that particular country. Kwa hivyo, it is when you get, a leadership which looks at each loan and then says that hii loan ilikuwa ni ya kufanya nini, alafu ikiwa ni si ya kufanya development, ikiwa wewe kufuata sheria za nchi, then wewe you have lent to the person that you have given that money, you have not lent to the country. Alafu katika kukubaliana katika any loan, pia unaandika vizuri, this loan is for this purpose. So if you give a loan for, after the purpose, you say that this loan will be deposited in this whatever, this place. Na hiyo inalingana na katika sheria hiyo nchi, loan zinawekwa wapi. Kwa hivyo ukiambiwa weka hii loan Cayman Islands ama those places, for offshore accounts, unajua kwamba unafanya jambo si sawa. Kwa hivyo that can be challenged also in the international courts. Kwa hivyo it is only that the countries don't like to follow them, and they keep on, of course, paying and that kind of stuff. So hiyo ni jambo linaweza kuwa prosecuted according to international law, because if somebody has lent for a purpose that is not in the law, if they have put that money somewhere else, then hiyo ni shida yao. And Mozambique was able, recently to demonstrate that. But there are people who have actually challenged, those particular things. Of course, we are told that if you don't pay, the international community is not going to give you loans and stuff like that. You'll be a failure country and so on. But if you demonstrate that these were things that were not done legally, then the people who lent, they will go after whoever it is that they gave the money to. And that's their issue. And actually the best situation is we run our country without corruption in such a way that we don't need those loans. We can stand, like Burkina Faso is already saying that if the information we get, and it has to be verified, that, they are debt free. And even during Kibaki, tried to some extent to really minimize, debt. So we should actually aim at running our country without corruption, with good economy, so that we don't have to, borrow unnecessarily and even misuse the money that we borrow. Now, it is no longer CBC, it is CBE, and I agree that parents from poor backgrounds find it very difficult to sustain this. And in those schools, there isn't much that is done if this is supposed to be experiential education. And actually, the entire educational system, despite the fact that kuna kitu kiliitwa Munavu report, a presidential report ya education, even up to now, assuming that there were good suggestions there, up to now, the committee that was supposed to implement it haijaundwa, and even some of the things that were recommended kama hii kitu ya elimu ya university fees ilibadilishwa tena. So in the education sector, we have to redo it afresh. Walimu kila wakati hawana pesa, hakuna capitation. University ni hizo shida ziko. Some of the universities are collapsing. Moi, Nairobi shida, Kenyatta shida. Most of the public universities are collapsing. So this is something that we have to do afresh. And even in ancient Africa, like Egypt, they actually had an educational system which brought like their public servants and generally the population elimu yao, which emphasized like this aspect of ethical, moral, spiritual values, mpaka wakadominate a lot of the world for 4,000 years, the longest living state up to now. So hii elimu ni kitu cha kukalia upya, from ECD mpaka university and so on. Imagine whether it's lecturers, whether it is teachers, they are paid peanuts until people don't respect their profession. And if they don't respect their profession and they are growing the people who will eventually take over, what is the quality of those people? So here a broad subject. I hope there'll be a space just to discuss education alone. And yes, I am now into teaching. Actually, to say, when I taught at the University of Nairobi for 25 years and left as an associate professor, those days, well, one can say about 80,000 shillings was a lot. But that was my end salary. And you can see, if I was in politics, if I was in private sector, if I was a lawyer in town, that's peanuts. And that's how we treat, these professors. That's why sometimes they're teaching in many universities. That is why, they are moonlighting and all that kind of stuff. So places, teachers are some of the most revered, professions. And you just don't, nobody just teaches. You must be very qualified to do so. Sankale asked about which parties. Yes, I think even now, maybe there are some parties which young people are forming, and that's right. But also those parties, how do you develop them? How do you make sure that there is a democratic constitution? How do you make sure that you have real members? How do you make sure that even that party has a manifesto, philosophy, vision? How do you make sure that the elections of the officials are democratic and they are real elections? When there is nomination, how do you make sure that the nominations are also democratic? All that, because now hizi parties tuko nazo, majority of them ni kitu ya watu, sio parties are, according to the constitution. Now the constitution says parties should be formed. So hiyo ni kazi kubwa, lakini I'm thinking it is also important to look at all the existing parties, because there may be some which are of a progressive nature and which will do their work in proper ways, so that they don't do what Sankale said, that is true. You can be invited into those parties and eventually you ask for money, ndio uwe upate nomination. Ikiwa una pesa unaambiwa kwenda. And that is why, if and when this Gen Z movement gels and they are able to say hii party sisi hata sasa tutaanza kusema watu wale hata hizi parties zingine, even if we are not there, we will be saying if so and so is nominated in that party because we have tumewachunguza, then we shall support that person. So that therefore the parties know they just don't do monkey business and they get away they get away with it. Jinsi imesemekana, of course Martha, you know, participated a lot in the constitution making and so on, but I emphasize, it is in my view, if the young people, you know, now are together, and if, you know, they say anybody who wants any position, sisi develop a criteria ya what leadership is, na kila mtu sisi akitaka support yetu, sisi kwanza tutamwangalia, tukiona anafaa ametosha boga, tutasema ndio, wewe tutakusupport. You know, it is like that rigorous, you know, movement, kusema kwamba now, and we are going to be in these positions, so that we say huyu Gen Z anatosha. You know, akina Tom Mboya walikuwa, you know, in serikali wakiwa under I think 30 or just about 30. You know, akina, you know, a lot of people even abroad, mtu anakuwa prime minister akiwa under 35. So it is not, you know, when you are prepared the way we started in terms of who are you, your philosophy, your jinsi una maadili and all that kind of stuff, unaweza you know, kukua anything in our country. So even if I suggest names or anybody suggests names, ultimately ni nyinyi ndio mtasema, just like I'm repeating, huyu anatosha mboga and atoshi, because we have developed our criteria and we are going to stick with it. Tumefundisha watu wetu, sasa si kupewa pesa, si handout, si kuambiwa, you know, because there's some tribal thing, you know, vote for our tribe, whatever. It depends on the kind of, ikiwa you sustained this thing of hata watu wanakuja wanataka kuwaoa na nini na nini, hii kitu ingine ya kuzungumza na watu wenu from every ward, because there are Gen Zs in every ward, there are Gen Ys in every ward, there are people of goodwill. That is the kind of thing, you know, that will be necessary. And I agree that a lot of our leaders in Africa, kuna a lot of self-serving, and it's not just at the national level. It is when people are local government, the councillors, Kanju, in the, you know, counties, and even a lot of leadership, you'll find that in a cooperative, people are wrecking the cooperative in, you know, even in faith organizations and so on, because kuna huu mdudu wa ubinafsi, mdudu wa ufisadi, mdudu wa, you know, umeenea mahali kwingi. And so people like Nyerere are exceptions, people like Sankara are exceptions, even this new Burkina Faso guy, and one can mention other people in Africa who have really tried, you know, like how, and they don't even sometimes have to be in politics. You can be a leader to influence politics without being in direct politics. Kama Mahatma Gandhi, kama Martin Luther King, you know, and those people. And in our country, people like Wangari Maathai, who was in politics, not so much so, but she was very influential because of the ideas ile anapanda, sio kupanda miti peke yake. Ideas ile anapanda ndio tuwe na kizazi kinaweza kuwa tofauti na kinaweza kuokoa nchi yetu.